Okay, here we are, continuing on our journey to researching consciousness. In this development, I'd like to use and refer back to my book, Journey Towards Self-Transformation for Service as Minister. This particular journey is progressive in nature. It's systemic, and that I would like to speak to you about the methodology that I have written about in chapter 2. Um, I should say the table of contents, but in the chapter 2 of the review of literature, I speak about the physiological and scientific effects of using integrative tools. But first of all, I'd like to speak about the nature of cognitive and non-cognitive consciousness, which I've described to you a little bit in my previous videos. That being said, the notion of the non-cognitive attachment simply assures us that we are in a state of our self, our natural essence of being. And for me, I'd like to describe to you on a very personal level my own journey in relation to discovery, my own pearls, if you will, that I'd like to offer you your own. So as we continue this journey through the videos, and um, I like to think that I can offer you in the very near future a live presentation with chat availability. But first of all, I like to build the foundation to what I'm speaking about, what uh, is the nature of becoming. So the nature of being before birth, it speaks about smriti in Sanskrit, it's memory. It also speaks about this value of reverberation of consciousness. Vritti is reverberation of consciousness. There's that stillness of mind consciousness, which I recall at the time of being called to come into this world, this earth plane, and that there is a moment of transition, a moment of position, if you will, that I recall that I heard the words, "He needs a volunteer," several times over, and such that it was bringing me out of the state of non-thinking, non-cognitive process, or non-cognitive samadhi, consciousness. So that being said, the nature of mind, if you will, is always seeking to move. So at the time of hearing this particular call, it was a response on my part, bringing me out from a state of non-cognitive consciousness to the conscious cognitive state, with my own response to the call, brought me into the karmic flow, if you will, from the Dharma, the call, the willingness to respond on my part, and the part of the soul, has the opportunity to, and the potentiality to come into experience, and that experience being um, the value and energy of the karmic patterns. That when one is incarnated, reincarnated into a birth process, life stream process, then what helps us to become familiar with what is occurring at the moment, it's kind of like the soul has a map that the soul will read along the journey, but at the same time will decipher, discern, and overall become integrated or not. This is the challenge that we have. So uh, these two values, dharma and karma, are very important to what I'm speaking to you about, and that I can offer you a systemic map to our journey in research in consciousness. Not only my personal uh, journey and walk in life, but also to help you to process and discern your own journey and walk in life towards blossoming your own pearls. This is the treasure that I look forward to seeing in the experience. So thank you, and I love walking with you in yours as well. Meanwhile, I'm hoping to offer you once again a systemic um, process to self-realization, to self-actualize a personal view through my own experience. But at the same time, you can view and discern your own experience of what you've already experienced and have undergone throughout your life course, life patterns that may make sense to you. But in the long run, uh, you'll become more acquainted to where you actually stand in the journey. So I'm hoping that these elements and the values that I wish to bring about hope to comb out at each section to describe to you how this unfoldment of self-actualization occurs from the beginning. And this is what we're doing, is to describe to you a non-cognitive pattern and responding to a call, in my case, that I can speak about on a personal level. And I can also help you to journey your own in a very healthy way to your own becoming whole. So in my particular book, I have written part B in chapter 2, psychological and human behavior manifestations of integration. And so this is what I'm speaking about at a deeper level, more profound level. It's based on Sankhya Yoga. It is based on the Vedantic point of view that I'm blessed and have been blessed throughout my years in life at certain stages, certain intervals to meet up with um, specific experiences, but not only that, with specific spiritual masters that have come my way. And because of my previous past lives, having both good merits, that I am coming to unveil now in this lifetime, but also I've had other demerits, if you will, in my spiritual bank that I'm hoping that they would finally be blessed, that we come to fruition at the highest nature of being. And I believe that's going to happen. So the third aspect in chapter 2C, the spiritual and healing path towards wholeness, that I would like to offer you as we proceed with these videos, slowly, piece by piece, come to acknowledge the wholeness of being and define what that means step by step. So that being said, I like the words "that being said." It's a good sentence because basically I'm saying it over again. And there's a self-empowerment in that value. So what we have is to understand uh, in this Vedic way, in this Vedantic method, a way of thinking, questioning, and investigating what our inner dynamisms want us to know at the level of the unconscious mind especially, that we have a key, we have a doorway, a portal through acquiring personal knowledge. And that's what I'd like to offer you and to walk with you and to discuss with you. So later on, as we have this live streaming happening in the very near future, we'll be able to chat with you as well and to get your feedback. What is your personal journey? What are you discovering, encountering, and what would you like for me to have support in response to your particular journey? And so what is required here is a process that you have given yourself, and that is the inquiry. You must have an inquiring mind as to soul journey with self, coming to the true nature of who you are. And I'll talk about that true nature in one moment. That true nature is the key to this doorway. It's offering us a personal knowledge, which, once again requires us to first question what's the next step. To know how to move beyond our ordinary knowledge, which has kept us from moving forward. It is our karma that has kept us moving forward. It is the perception that we have for ourselves. And this is the trick. It is the perception of our emotions, our sensations, our development process. It's perceptions that are necessary to have, but at the same time, we shouldn't get stuck in them. And that is why we are getting to relive our karmas over and over and over again. We could live 60, 70, 90 years with the same indebted karmas over and over past in lifetimes to lifetime. If we are listening to these avenues of the way of perception, the way we perceive, we can get stuck at the emotional level. We can get stuck at the psychological level. We can get stuck at the physical level. These are very true. The psychological is very powerful. And so, how do we understand them? How do we come to know? How do we come to model and to experience the integration process itself? What does that look like? First, asking the question, are you ready? Do you are you prepared to journey and stay with it daily? So the tools that mentioned previously, um, I will speak about here in these videos, step by step of the way. As I'm referring to some of my notes here. So it's a self-examination that is reflecting a personal narrative through the human body, the mind, that consciousness can bring us to a state of coherence, which is a primary issue to the emotional thoughts, patterns, and sensations that we are in the process of integrating, developing, and becoming step by step. And once again, it could be a lifetime. And so we must begin now. So in this personal experience of mine and my practice, my spiritual sadhana, I've been doing for almost 40 years now, 35 to 40 years. And that is the use of pranayama, meditation, deepening self-awareness, and recitation of mantra. This has been very, very good for me. It has allowed me to settle down the nervous system, purify the nadis within the nervous system, the knots, untying the knots through the Vedic tradition, mantra. So it's two things that one must appreciate. The self-inquiry for the journey, but also recognizing one's Ishtadevata, or the presence of God within, the presence of God through a practice of devotion, bhakti, that one comes to jnana yoga. And so these two will help us tremendously, that we offer our prayers to the divine nature. And so Purusha sounds great for primary source of being, God. May come in different forms for you. Nevertheless, we are present in that the endeavor of a prayerful life, meditation, the value of higher consciousness. We will always need the support of the teacher within, the teacher without. And so I've been fortunate to have a teacher come my way in the form of Sant Keshavdas from Bangalore, India in 1986, and Satya Sai Baba from Puttaparthi, India in 1986. Actually, Sai Baba was the first experience that I had with a teacher, with Guru, the blessings, because I asked and I was ready because of past karmas. At the level of the merits that I had in my spiritual bank, I was able to unconsciously reach into my memory banks to just feel the nature of divine love because I was ready at that moment. Talk about cycles in time, the karmic wheel, the dharmic wheel, is that when you're ready, the teacher will be present. And certainly both came because I asked Sai Baba for his blessings. He came in my dream. I won't go into the experience now, but uh, as he came into my dream, I asked him to send me um, a teacher because Swami Sai Baba asked me to come to India. And so I asked him to bring me a teacher that I can go with to India so that he could take me to India with him um, in pilgrimage. And he did. All of a sudden, not a few months later, did I meet up with Sant Keshav in Anaheim, California. And after that, in '88, I found myself in Puttaparthi, India, traveling with Guruji, traveling with Sant Keshav to areas where I had been before in previous lifetimes. Singapore, where I was a Hindu carver and had the opportunity to visit the carving of Ganesha, who lost my train of thought. Ganesha was in this particular restaurant window, sitting. The Ganesha that was present is the one that I did in a previous lifetime in Singapore. Another lifetime will be Goa, India, others in southern India, um, and Chamundi Hill was another point of reference in South India. Made many incarnations around Mysore, Bangalore, southern India. So in other case, in other words, these spiritual values remain within my own consciousness. As your spiritual merits, you'll be able to call up unconsciously, unknown to ego, will come up because ego doesn't know about them. Will have the availability to open up that pathway to these spiritual merits to allow you to make the progressive journey on the spiritual path that will help you get there to whatever is necessary to help you get there. And so this particular personal experience of mine helped me get there with the blessings and the Shaktipat that I received many times over by different swamis, different saints and gurus, that I was able to be blessed by that, lifting up my own consciousness. If it were not for them, I don't know where I would be. Certainly I wouldn't be here talking with you. I would be traveling some other pathway. But what is the case here is the fact that because of the spiritual merits that I hold in my bag of consciousness, that I hold in the spiritual vault, this bank that I can take out anytime I want with a spiritual ATM card, if you will, where I can use for the advantage of continued growth to the journey towards giving, towards healing, towards teaching, towards the other. So in the process, I must become aware of the fact that one must know how to teach. And so what I'm presenting to you is a systemic program to self-actualization, deepening the core of yourself. And that self comes as two natures. So I've given here a little bit about precognitive thought pattern. Now, coming back into what causes a cognitive pattern to consciousness. It is the non-cognitive versus the cognitive balance that we come into action by the element of karma. It is the karma that says there are four karmas. I'll talk about them probably in the next video. But for now, there are four karmas that allude to previous karmas, predestined, current karmas, and the karmas that we are currently building now for a future life, whether that would be coming back into this terrestrial world or going on to another astral world, or more further to Vaikuntha, Narayana. Vaikuntha would be the ultimate heaven. And of course there are many different heavens, like perhaps going on perpetual vacation. That would be cool. So there, once again, the two important elements to our nature is one, which I've mentioned, is Purusha, is the divine Ishva Devata, your divine God relationship. The second one being Prakriti. It is the reverberation of consciousness. Prakriti is that nature that is primarily involved in creation. It is that permission from the Purusha that is given, that we are enabling self to become. And what we have as building blocks are the nature of karma. Both good, bad, or indifferent karmic values that will bring us to finally burn them away. So with our spiritual endeavors, if we have enough spiritual fire from past lives, we can burn them. All negative karmas from past life, burn them in this lifetime. You know, whether we are being haunted by our ancestors, you know, because they're jealous. We come into life patterns with family who are jealous, blah, blah, blah. We're able to realize, perhaps, like in my case, not to get emotionally attached to family. It doesn't mean you don't love them. It means you're not putting up with nonsense that is not yours. But you don't respond to that as a negative. You respond to it as, this is understood completely. Not my issue. And you have to validate that in the experience, experientially, in your walk, in your journey. So that's what we're here to accomplish. We are here to accomplish what does it mean to have these emotional experiences, the sensations that take us to either insight or more suffering. That's really important. So as we continue further, it depends how we interpret our world. Depends how uh, we are coming to a discovery of what is um, Maya, illusion, and how that is real enough to take us there, meaning our karmas will take us there. In other words, to come to a fullness, to come to purify these karmas, uh, to integrate these karmas at the cosmic level. One can come into that fruition through a personal practice, a spiritual sadhana, which is daily, personal, and it must be long-lasting experience. And so it is understanding the qualities of these natures. You know, once again, I described to you the 4 elements to karma, and that I'd like to talk about more, but for now, we just offer you um, more of these qualities and energies of karma that, because of past life, some that you've had with some of your family members in this lifetime, others not. So your relationship in with your siblings, etc., with mother, father, may be different. And that's the beauty of it. It's like, it's not all the same, but there are similar differences because of past life connections, past life conditioning. Um, and so, how do we navigate the complexities and integrate these complexities as we journey? We have to have understanding to what these qualities represent, what they are, and we have to name them. We have to name the factors, the elements. The factors being, once again, Sanskrit really helps to define the elements to our physiology, elements to our consciousness, because physical, psychological, and emotional values are very important to the journey that helps us to come to perception, that helps us to come to integrate, to have an inner knowing, insight. And so it is very self-reflective that one must have the ability to know how one is researching their own consciousness, to be receptive to the higher nature as the observer. As the observer is witnessing within, to the effective sense, to an empathic listening partner for others as well. So within this quality that I'm speaking about, there are several elements to that. The doshas, the 3 doshas, which is uh, kapha, pit, and what's the third one? We got fire, air, and water. Pit is fire, kapha is water, and uh, yeah, I'm getting tongue-tied. Anyway, these 3 elements, vayu, I'm getting confused between the two words that represent air, fire, and water. And so these elements help the physiology to come to homeostasis. Fire is digestion, water, blood, movement, air, breathing, the 5 different koshas or spheres, the 5 levels that represent this air pranic quality. 5 pranic qualities offer the physiology to move, to have our being, to have control over digestion. Fire breaks down the food for living, for digesting, for combusting, etc. And so with that we have other pranic elements that offer us breathing, offer us pranayama, techniques of how to breathe, how to come to calm the nervous system, how to calm the mind, etc. So I'll talk about that later as well. So just a few elements that we talk about, also the chakras we'll talk about as well, that certain levels of existence that help us along the journey. And sometimes when they get slowed up, then we have disease, we have suffering, we have a discontinuity of life, of a happy life. So here we are now, coming to a process, mapping out, as I mentioned earlier, checking my notes, make sure I'm hitting all the right spots. And so, I talked about taking stock into our own, taking stock into our journey, the inner and outer to self and personal orientation, as personal witness, researching our own consciousness through self-inquiry daily. So once again, I'm going to close. I don't want to repeat myself over, but it offers us a statement to a spiritual understanding of our own journeys. And it offers us to know and understand that we have certain skills that we can acquire and come to know, to assist us on the journey. That once we know the methodology, we can go to a depth, coming to a statement of peace, coming to an equanimity, coming to a wholeness in life. And so with that, in the next video I'll come to speak about what is it that we can come to that may help us. It's through personal understanding in the personal spiritual practice. How are you? How are you coming along? What are your questions? What are your fears? Are you letting go of your fears? You've got to know what your sense knowing about your fears, your angers. So these are very palpable in our lives that we can help you with. Come to discover that these fears, and especially angers, are our allies to the spiritual journey. They're good to have. They're important to have. Once again, use your perception to right thinking. Bring them in to your fold. Don't allow them to control you. That's not the right position. So we'll be talking about means to the components that offer at certain levels our own kriyas will help us along the journey. And as I mentioned, two of them are constant practice with your meditation, your spiritual sadhana, very important, and knowing detachment. So we'll be talking more about that in our next video. And for the moment, I'd like to say that just to back up a little bit in terms of what we did say, that there's this non-cognitive value of consciousness coming into being that is prior to birthing. So in your birthing experience on a daily level, this is similar to the physical world and the spiritual dimension, cosmic dimension, that we are experiencing life. That in our near-death experience, our life becomes a near-life experience instead. And that we have our particular lens that is calibrated, our consciousness is calibrated, that we have direct knowledge through our own pure perception of consciousness to self-actualization. It's very simple, actually. The hard part is doing it. The hard part is becoming it. Turning your perception around where this life can easily keep us from knowing. Because it's the environment that will control you. It's an outer social construct that will control you. And you'll go with it, and you'll fall for it. And we all have, and we continue to do so. Except when you get to a placement of turning that around, you bless community, you bless city, you bless groups. You become consciously aware where your cosmic intelligence is taken over, and that you can proceed forward, onward to blessing others in a very tangible and practical way. Now, we're only at the beginning, and I'd like to address to you, for me, what I've written in my third book, which is my second book, which is almost done, and I'll wait to that book until I'm complete with it. But it's really mapping out my personal dharmic and karmic journey throughout my life, beginning at the prior to birth, as well as through the birthing process, etc., blah, 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 that will introduce you to my own autobiography. So I hope that we can see you next time. It would be nice to meet up with you again. These videos will come about every 2 weeks, thereabouts. And I'm feel like I'm coming on a roll, getting on a roll that we'll just continue to evolve as we go and get used to speaking through this particular vantage point, and that is the videos as a teaching model for us. Just checking my notes, making sure that we talked about the nature of being, which I did, and um, the power of the nature of um, the five koshas, the three doshas, um, karma, and the chakras we'll talk about as we continue, and then speak about more about the pranas as well. It's very important. Those are the koshas, pranas, pranayamas, and okay. I think we are ready to call it a morning, this Sunday morning, and it's good, having church with you. It's good to have you come to gather with me. I thank you. Namaste. God bless you. And until the next time. Bye bye.